March 26, 1945. Bad Nauheim, Germany. By this point in the war, victory is no longer a question of bravery. It is a question of math. How many gallons of fuel can be pushed forward today? How many tons of ammunition can be unloaded before nightfall? How many bridges can handle tanks instead of trucks? Wars are not won by heroic speeches. They are won by supply clerks, railway engineers, and men who know exactly how much gasoline a Sherman tank burns per mile. That is what General Omar Bradley is doing this morning. He stands inside the headquarters of the 12th Army Group, phone pressed against his ear, listening carefully as Dwight D. Eisenhower speaks from his own command post. Eisenhower is calm, methodical, precise. They are discussing fuel allocations, not strategy, not glory. Fuel. Third Army has been burning gasoline faster than anyone predicted. Patton always does. Eisenhower wants assurances that Bradley can keep the supply lines functioning without starving. First Army or Ninth Army? Bradley answers carefully. He always does, yes. Ike, we can divert additional fuel trucks from the southern depots. Ammunition stocks are sufficient for at least 10 days at current expenditure rates. He pauses, listening. Yes, sir. We're adjusting the ratios. This is the reality of command in 1945. Not maps with arrows, but ledgers with numbers. Not charges, but calculations behind Bradley. The war room is quiet. Officers move softly. Typewriters clack in controlled rhythm. The wall-sized map of Germany dominates the room, covered in pins and grease pencil markings. Then the door opens. An operations officer steps inside. Bradley notices immediately. The man's face is white. Not tired white. Not stressed white. Shock white. Bradley holds up one finger without turning round. Wait. Eisenhower is still talking about gasoline burn rates and truck availability. Bradley listens, nodding automatically. Behind him, the operations officer does not wait. Sir, he says quietly. Urgently, we have a situation with Third Army. Bradley covers the phone with his hand, irritation flashing across his face. Not now. He whispers sharply. It's urgent. Sir, Bradley exhales through his nose. How urgent? The officer swallows. General Patton. Sir, Bradley closes his eyes. Of course it is. Ike. Bradley says into the phone, already knowing what's coming. I need to call you back. Eisenhower hasn't finished his sentence before the line goes dead. Bradley lowers the receiver. Slowly. What did George do now? The operations officer steps forward and places a folded radio message on the desk. His hands tremble slightly. Third Army reports their forward elements have reached Aschaffenburg. Sir, Bradley doesn't respond immediately. He unfolds the message carefully, as if sudden movement might change what's written on it. Aschaffenburg. He reads it again. Then he stands. Bradley walks to the wall map and traces Third Army's last confirmed position with his finger, Frankfurt. They were in Frankfurt yesterday. He moves his finger east, following the thin blue arrow marking Third Army's axis of advance, Frankfurt, Hanau. Aschaffenburg, 60 miles. Bradley stops. When did this message arrive? He asks quietly. 15 minutes ago, sir. It's time-stamped this morning. Bradley does the math instantly. He doesn't need a calculator. If Third Army reached Aschaffenburg this morning, they were confirmed in Frankfurt last evening. They advanced 60 miles overnight. Bradley says, yes, sir. In one night, yes. Sir, Bradley lowers himself into a chair. That's impossible. The operations officer hesitates. Apparently not, sir. For a long moment, no one speaks. Bradley stares at the map. Third Army is now along Blue Arrow stabbing deep into Germany, far ahead of the other Allied formations. First Army lags behind to the north. Ninth Army even farther. Third Army is alone. How far ahead are they? Bradley asks. Approximately 60 miles ahead of First Army, sir. 80 miles ahead of Ninth Army. Bradley exhales slowly. Where are their flanks? The officer hesitates again. Exposed, sir. How exposed? Completely exposed, sir. They're in a salient. Bradley rubs his forehead. One German counterattack could cut them off entirely. Yes. Sir. He pinches the bridge of his nose. Get me Patton. We're trying. Sir. What do you mean? Trying. Third Army communications are stretched. Their advance has outrun some of their signal. Units. Bradley lets out a short, humorless laugh. Stretched. Yes, sir. They've advanced so fast that the radios can't keep up. The operations officer nods. We're working through relays. Bradley shakes his head slowly. Of course they are, he mutters. George is moving faster than radio waves. 20 minutes later. The phone rings. Bradley grabs it immediately. George. Patton's voice comes through the line. Cheerful and relaxed. Brad, did you get my position report? I got it. Bradley says flatly. You're in Aschaffenburg. That's right. You were in Frankfurt yesterday. Also correct. Bradley inhales deeply. George, that's 60 miles, 63. Actually, I measured it on the map. You can't advance 60 miles in one day. Patton doesn't. Hesitate. Why not? Bradley closes his eyes. Why not? He repeats. George, there are German divisions between Frankfurt and Aschaffenburg. There were. Patton corrects, past tense. What happened to them? They retreated. I pursued. Now I'm in Aschaffenburg. And they're somewhere else probably running toward Berlin. Bradley feels the familiar pressure building behind his eyes. George, Doctrine says after a breakthrough, you consolidate your position before advancing. Patton nods. Doctrine also said the Rhine was impregnable. I crossed it with some boats and a band of angry Missourians. Maybe Doctrine isn't always right. George, Brad, listen to me. Patton's tone changes slightly, still confident. But focused. I know you're worried. I know this looks reckless, but I can feel it. The Germans are beaten, not just tactically, psychologically. They've lost the will to fight. Bradley says nothing. If I stop now to consolidate, Patton continues, I give them time. Time to recover. Time to organize new defensive lines. But if I keep pushing, keep the pressure on, they'll collapse completely. Bradley stares at the map. The terrible thing is, Patton might be right. Where are you planning to go next? Bradley asks. Wolfsburg. Then Nuremberg. Then we'll see. Maybe Prague. Maybe Austria. Bradley straightens. George. I can't authorize you to advance wherever you want. Patton's voice hardens. Then don't authorize. Just don't order me to stop. I'll take silence as permission. That's not how the chain of command works. Brad, Patton says quietly, you're the best friend I have in this army. You protected me when I wanted to fire me. You give me chances when everyone else wrote me off. Bradley doesn't respond. So I'm asking you now as a friend. Patton continues. Let me finish this. Let me end this war the only way I know how, by giving me a heart attack, Bradley mutters. Patton laughs. You'll survive. You always do. The line goes dead. Bradley stares at the phone. He hung up on me. He says slowly. His operations officer clears his throat. Sir, what should I tell the staff? Bradley replaces the phone carefully, as if it might explode. "Tell them Third Army is advancing," he says. "Exact positions unknown. Expected rate of advance impossible." He looks back at the map, and for the first time since Normandy, Omar Bradley realizes something unsettling. Third Army is no longer operating within the system. It is operating beyond it, and somewhere out there. George Patton is moving faster than anyone can stop him. Forward reconnaissance. Yes, sir. He does that frequently. When did he last check in? This morning, sir. He reported from Aschaffenburg. Bradley looks at the clock. That was 8 hours ago. Yes, sir. So he could be anywhere. That's accurate. Sir. Bradley closes his eyes. Thank you. Gay. He hangs up slowly. Then he turns to his operations officer. Start a list. Yes, sir. Things General Patton has done that should be impossible. The officer hesitates, then nods. Number 1. Bradley says, advanced 60 miles in 1 day. He pauses. Number 2. Became impossible to locate. The officer writes, add to it as needed, throughout the day. The reports keep coming. Third Army captures bridges intact. Third Army overruns supply depots. Third Army bypasses resistance instead of stopping to eliminate it. Third Army leaves pockets of German forces behind and keeps moving. Every rule Bradley learned at West Point says this should end in disaster. And overextended. Salient. Exposed flanks. Supply lines stretched to the breaking point, and yet German resistance continues to crumble. Prisoners pour in by the thousands. Captured officers speak of chaos, confusion, units dissolving overnight. Patton isn't just advancing. He's collapsing the enemy's will. Late that afternoon, a junior intelligence officer approaches Bradley hesitantly. Sir, reconnaissance reports suggest. General Patton's personal jeep was spotted near Bamberg. Bradley looks up sharply. Bamberg. Yes. Sir, that's how far ahead? Approximately 200 miles from our rear headquarters. Bradley leans back in his chair. With any other commander, he says slowly, that would be impossible. The officer waits. With Patton. Bradley continues, that's exactly where he'd be. That evening. Bradley stands alone in front of the map. He studies the scattered blue pins. This is no longer command. This is pursuit. Patton has turned Third Army into something different. Not a formation, a force of momentum. And momentum does not stop because someone asks it politely. Bradley knows Eisenhower will demand answers. He knows the Soviets complicate everything. He knows that one German counterattack could turn this into catastrophe. But he also knows something else. Patton is doing what no Allied general has managed before. He is breaking Germany faster than Germany can react. Bradley rubs his eyes, commanding Patton. He realizes it is not about giving orders. It is about surviving the ride, and tomorrow will be worse. Get me Eisenhower, he says. The call goes through quickly. I hear. Eisenhower's voice is strained. Brad, Eisenhower says without preamble. Where is Third Army? Bradley pauses. That's an excellent question, sir. There's silence on the line. That's not an answer. Brad, their last confirmed position puts elements near Wurzburg, sir. But that report is 8 hours old. Eisenhower exhales audibly. They could be anywhere within a 50-mile radius by now. Another silence. Brad, Eisenhower says carefully, are you telling me you don't know where your own army is? They're advancing faster than we can track them, sir, by the time reports arrive. They're obsolete. Eisenhower's voice hardens. The Russians are advancing from the east. We have demarcation lines. If Patton advances too far, He could run into Soviet forces. I understand. Sir, do you? Eisenhower snaps. Because right now it sounds like you have an entire army operating independently because it has. Moving too fast to control. Bradley has no good response. Because it's true. I'll get current. Positions, sir, Bradley says finally. Do that, Eisenhower replies. And Brad, tell George to slow down. Bradley closes his eyes. I'll try. That's not a yes. It's the best I can offer. The line goes dead. Bradley lowers the receiver and stares at the desk for a moment longer than necessary. Then he reaches for another phone. Get me 3rd Army Headquarters. After several tense minutes, the call connects. This is General Hobart Gay. Bradley recognizes the voice immediately. Patton's chief of staff. Calm, efficient, the man who tries to impose order on chaos. Gay. Bradley says, "Where is 3rd Army?" There's a pause. Elements are approaching Wurzburg. Sir, other elements are pushing toward Bayreuth. Some units are securing our southern flank near Schweinfurt. Bradley begins marking the map. The points form a rough triangle, 80 miles across. Where is Patton? Bradley asks. Another pause. We're not entirely sure. Sir, Bradley freezes. You don't know where your commanding general is, sir. Gay says carefully. General Patton is conducting forward reconnaissance. Bradley blinks. They were near Wurzburg yesterday. Eisenhower says slowly. Yes, sir. That's 60 miles. Yes, sir. Eisenhower exhales. That's insane. Yes, sir. No army can sustain that pace. Apparently, Bradley says. That army can. Another pause. Where is Patton? Eisenhower asks. Bradley hesitates. Unknown. Sir. Silence. He's been conducting forward reconnaissance for 3 days. We've lost track of him. You've lost a 3-star general. Bradley chooses his words carefully. It's more accurate to say he refuses to be found, sir. Eisenhower lets out a short laugh despite himself. He's ungovernable. Yes. Sir. Then why haven't you fired him? Bradley doesn't hesitate. Because he's winning. Eisenhower sighs. That's the only reason. There is a longer silence now. Brad, Eisenhower says finally, when you do find George, tell him to slow down. We have demarcation lines with the Soviets. If he advances too far east. I understand, sir. Do you? Eisenhower presses. Because right now, Patton is operating like an independent warlord. Bradley says nothing. He's not coordinating. Eisenhower continues. He's not following orders. He's advancing wherever he wants. Sir, Bradley says quietly, every time I order George to stop, he finds a way around it. He'll say he's consolidating forward positions or eliminating pockets of resistance, technically. He's not disobeying. But practically, he never stops moving. Then be less technical. Eisenhower snaps. Tell him explicitly, stop. I will, Bradley says. If I can find him, the line goes dead. That night, Bradley sits alone in his quarters. He studies the reports again. German resistance ahead of 3rd Army is disintegrating. Entire units surrender without firing. Officers speak of no orders, no fuel. No hope. Patton's gamble speed over security is working. But it is still a gamble. One armored. Counterattack. One well-coordinated ambush. One broken bridge at the wrong moment, and 3rd Army could be cut off entirely. Bradley rubs his temples. He is commanding chaos on March 30th. 3rd Army enters Nuremberg. The city falls after fierce but brief fighting. American flags rise where swastikas once hung, and still, Patton is nowhere to be found. That afternoon, a message finally arrives at 3rd Army headquarters. Patton is returning. Bradley orders an immediate call set up with Eisenhower when Patton walks into 3rd Army headquarters. He looks exactly as expected: dusty boots, wrinkled uniform, ivory-handled pistols resting casually at his hips. He is grinning. "George," Bradley says sharply. "Sit down." Patton obliges, unbothered. "You look tired, Brad." "I've spent for days trying to find you." "I wasn't lost," Patton replies. "I knew exactly where." "I was. Nobody else did." Patton shrugs. "I was scouting." Bradley stares at him. "You were too." "100 miles ahead of your headquarters." "Technically," Patton says. "They were behind me." Bradley closes his eyes. "Eisenhower wants to talk to you." "Of course he does." Bradley hands him the phone. "This is Patton." Eisenhower's voice is cold enough that Bradley can hear it clearly across the room. "George, do you have any idea where you've been for the past 4 days?" "Yes." "Yes, sir. Reconsidering routes toward Czechoslovakia without authorization, without support. 200 miles from your headquarters, sir." Patton replies calmly. "The Germans are beaten." "I needed to see how beaten." "So you went and looked?" "Yes." "Sir, behind enemy lines. With what security?" "My driver and my pistols." Bradley winces. "That's all the security I need." Eisenhower exhales sharply. "George, you can't just drive around Germany like you're on a sightseeing tour." "Why not?" Patton replies. "The Germans are running away." "That's not the point," Eisenhower snaps. "The point is coordination, communication, chain of command, sir," Patton says respectfully. "Those things slow me down." "There it is. The Germans are retreating in chaos." Patton continues. "Every hour I spend coordinating is an hour they spend reorganizing. I'd rather keep pressure on, even if it means running into the Soviets." "You don't get to decide that," Eisenhower says sharply. "I'll handle the Soviets if I meet them." Bradley can hear Eisenhower's patience cracking. "George," Eisenhower says slowly, "you are violating every principle of modern military command." "And yet," Patton replies, "I've advanced 200 miles in 9 days. My casualties are low. German resistance is collapsing. We're achieving every objective ahead of schedule." A pause. "What exactly am I doing wrong, sir?" Eisenhower is silent for a long moment. Then, unexpectedly, he laughs. Not a happy laugh, a tired one. "Nothing," Eisenhower says. "That's the problem." Bradley exhales. "You're succeeding while ignoring every rule that keeps an army under control. Maybe those rules need updating, sir." Another laugh. "George," Eisenhower says, I'm not ordering you to stop." Bradley stiffens. "But," Eisenhower continues, "I am ordering you to file regular position reports. I need to know where you are." "I'll try, sir." "That's not good enough." "It's the best you're getting." Patton replies, "If I stop to file paperwork every hour, I'm not advancing. You can have coordination or speed." Silence. "Choose." The line goes dead. Patton hands the phone back to Bradley. "He hung up on the Supreme Allied commander." Bradley says quietly, "He'll get over it." Patton replies, "He always does." Bradley sits down heavily. "George," he says, "you've advanced 200 miles in 9 days. You're approaching Soviet lines without authorization. You've given Ike and me more stress than the rest of the war combined." Patton's grin fades. "But we're winning, Brad." Bradley looks at him. "That's the only reason you're not fired." Patton nods once. "Then I'll keep winning." Bradley studies the man in front of him. Impossible, ungovernable, brilliant. And somehow, ending the war faster than anyone thought possible. April 1st, 1945. By now, the maps are lying. Not deliberately, not maliciously. They are simply obsolete the moment the ink dries. At 12th Army Group Headquarters. General Omar Bradley no longer asks for precise positions. He asks for approximations, estimates. Guesses framed as intelligence. Because Third Army is no longer moving in days or even hours, it is moving in moments. Blue pins are placed on the map and removed almost immediately. Grease pencil arrows are erased and redrawn so often the surface beneath them has worn thin. Bradley watches his staff struggle with a problem no military school ever prepared them for. How? Do you command speed itself? Third Army is no longer advancing. It is flowing. Across rivers before bridges are blown. Through cities before defenses are organized. Past resistance before it realizes it has been bypassed. Patton has turned maneuver warfare into something closer to inevitability each morning. Bradley receives position reports that are already wrong. Third Army is here now. They are no already beyond that. Supply officers panic, then adapt. Fuel trucks route on the fly. Ammunition depots leapfrog forward without orders, following the sound of the guns instead of instructions from headquarters. Communications fail daily. Radios break down. Signal units slide behind. Telephone lines are cut. Faster than they can be repaired, and yet the Army does not slow. If anything, it accelerates. By mid-April, Third Army has advanced more than 300 miles across Germany in 6 weeks, a distance most armies would struggle to cover in 6 months. Bradley receives casualty reports and reads them twice. Expecting a mistake, losses are lower than projected, far lower. Patton's gamble speed over. Security has denied the Germans the one thing they still possess, time. Without time, there can be no defense, no reorganization, no recovery. German units dissolve before contact. Soldiers abandon weapons. Officers surrender entire battalions rather than attempt coordination they know no longer exists. Patton is not defeating formations. He is erasing them every few days. Eisenhower calls Brad. He asks, "Where is Third Army today?" And Bradley gives the only answer he can. "Somewhere east of where they were yesterday, sir." It becomes a grim joke among the staff. Whenever a report arrives, someone inevitably mutters the same for words. He's where. At first, it is confusion. Then frustration, eventually. Something else, a kind of awe. Bradley begins to realize that Patton is not ignoring the system. He is outrunning it. Modern warfare depends on coordination, synchronization, control. Patton has discovered the system's weakness. If you move faster than command can react, command becomes irrelevant. That realization terrifies Bradley, and, privately, impresses him. April bleeds into May. The Soviet armies loom in the east, massive and relentless. Demarcation lines become urgent concerns. Political consequences hang over every mile Patton advances. Eisenhower sends explicit instructions. Do not cross this line. Do not advance beyond this axis. Do not engage Soviet forces. Bradley passes the orders along. Patton acknowledges them, then continues advancing, not disobeying, just redefining what advance means. He secures forward positions. He eliminates pockets of resistance. He conducts reconnaissance in force. Always moving, never stopping. Bradley stops trying to rein him in completely. Instead, he adapts. He stops asking Patton to slow down. He starts asking how to survive the consequences. Supply is prioritized toward Third Army not because doctrine demands it, but because reality does. Other armies adjust their pace to avoid being left behind entirely. Patton has become the tempo of the war. Everyone else is reacting to him. One evening in late April, Bradley stands alone in front of the map. The blue arrow marking Third Army stretches across southern Germany like a crack in glass. He thinks back to March 26th, to Frankfurt, to Aschaffenburg, to the moment he first realized something impossible was happening. He remembers the feeling, the loss of control, the frustration, the fear. Now, something else sits beside those emotions. Acceptance. Patton cannot be controlled. He can only be endured. And as long as he keeps winning, endured he will be. On May 7, 1945, the message arrives. Germany has surrendered. Unconditional. The war in Europe is over. At headquarters, there is no cheering at first. Just exhaustion. 6 years of global war ends not with celebration, but with silence. Bradley sits at his desk, staring at the final reports from Third Army. Patton is, unsurprisingly, already beyond his last reported position. Even now, someone asks Bradley how Third Army managed to advance so far, so fast, how they did what every military textbook says cannot be done. Bradley thinks for a moment. Then he smiles, a tired smile. The truth, he says. I spent 6 weeks asking the same question. The officer looks confused. What question, sir? Bradley glances at the map one last time. He's where? That phrase becomes shorthand for the entire campaign. 4 words, 2 syllables each. A question that contains disbelief, exasperation, and reluctant admiration all at once. Because Patton was always somewhere he wasn't supposed to be, moving faster than he was supposed to move, achieving objectives he wasn't supposed to reach yet. Bradley would later say that commanding Patton took 10 years off his life. But when Germany surrendered, and someone asked him whether Patton had been worth the trouble, Bradley did not hesitate. Yes, he said. Absolutely. Because you don't let Patton do anything. Nobody lets Patton do anything. You just hold on, and try not to die of a heart attack before he wins the war. He's where, for words, 1 question, 1,000 headaches, and the fastest ending to a war anyone had ever seen.